All right, guys, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when you're watching this. We are on page 27 and page 28 of your notes packet, in your notes packet here. And what we're going to be doing is we are going to build upon the concept of how to factor trinomials. But in this case, we're gonna be looking at what do you do when you have a trinomial and when you have to factor it, and that a value, remember, which is the value in front of the x squared, is not equal to 1. Okay, so yesterday or the last notes we looked at, we went over how to factor trinomials when the a value was equal to 1. Today, though, we're going to look at what do you do when the a value is some number other than 1. Like you could see in this example right here, the a value is 2. In this example down here, in the 2x squared plus 10x plus 8, the a value is also 2, okay? So if you notice, and you'll notice this today, in every example that we're going to do today, the a value is always going to be, in this case, the a value is 4. If I go over to this number, this equation right here, the a value is 3. Okay, so every single problem that you'll notice that we're going to do today, the a value is going to be some number other than 1. All right, so, and then there's going to be just, it's basically going to be the same as how we factor trinomials, but there's going to be just a little bit of a difference between it. You're going to have to do one or two extra things. So first of all, before we get started, let me review this chart over here that I am highlighting, or I'm boxing in my highlighter of yellow. This is the chart right here that you're going to use that will tell you what, depending on what kind of trinomial you have, if you have a plus plus, or a plus minus, or a minus minus, or a minus plus trinomial, how you set up the factors, okay? So for instance, if you have a plus number 1, line 1 in red here, if you have a plus plus trinomial, the factors, the two expressions that you're going to factor, are going to be an addition and an addition. Okay, line 2 in blue here, if you have a plus minus trinomial, that tells you the two factors. The first factor is going to be a plus, an addition, and the second factor is going to be a minus, a subtraction. Okay, this chart here in yellow, you always want to be referring back to this when you're factoring trinomials. It helps you set up what your factors look like, okay? And then over here that I'm also outlining in, or highlighting in yellow, or boxing in yellow here, this is kind of going to be the steps of what we're going to do each time we have to factor a trinomial where the coefficient, the a value, is some number other than 1. So you can see it's going to be 3 steps, and we'll work this out. I think it's better to do it than to like try to set up the steps. But essentially, we are going to multiply the a and the c value. Then we're going to set up our factor t chart, and then we're going to divide the factors by a, and you'll see what I mean when I do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's dive into this right here. We're going to do, if you notice, as you notice, there's problems that have a blue part next to it. Those are the problems that I'm going to go over in today's lesson. Okay, so the first one, we are going to factor 2x squared plus 13x plus 15. Notice that the a value, which is 2, is some number other than 1. And just for a point of interest, the b value, remember, is positive 13. The b value is always the number in front of the x. We call it the coefficient in front of the x. And in this case, the c value is 15. Okay, you guys, and the c value, which stands for the constant, is the number that does not have a variable next to it. Okay, so what we're going to do is look at it right here. This type of trinomial is what we call a plus plus trinomial, as indicated by the addition symbols. So we go down here to our chart. That would fall under the category of line number 1 in red, a plus plus trinomial. So this tells us that when we factor this problem, we're going to get two sets of quantities, two sets of parentheses, and since it's a plus plus, both of the quantities will have a plus and a plus in them, okay? Now, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to do a couple of steps to figure out what goes inside the parentheses, in front of the pluses or the addition symbols, and behind them as well. So here's how you do it. First thing you do is you multiply the a and the c value together. Okay, so you're going to take the 2, you're going to multiply it by the 15, that is equal to 30. And then the next thing that you do is now you're going to set up your factor T chart. All right. So what you do when you have this, and this is a little bit different than previously, whatever the A and the C value multiplied to make, which in this case is 30, you make that as your first column number. And then your second column number, remember, is your B value when you're making your factor T chart. So what this tells us is, now remember the first column where the 30 is, that stood for multiplication. And then the second column where the 13 is, that stood for addition. Okay, and so now what you have to do is you need to find two numbers, a pair of numbers, and they're both going to be positive because I have plus plus that multiply to make 30, but also add to make 13. Okay, so there's a couple numbers that I could work with. So if I was saying, okay, what positive numbers multiply to make 30? 1 times 30 is 30. Well, those numbers would not add to 13. Okay, 2 times 15 multiplies to make 30, but 2 plus 15 does not add to 13, so those aren't my numbers there. Okay, and we just keep going, find numbers that multiply. How about 3 times 10? Well, if I add up 3 plus 10, you notice that not only does 3 times 10 multiply to make 30, that it also 3 plus 10 adds to make 13. So what does that tell me? Well, it tells me I just found my factors. So my factors are, I put a plus 3 here, and I put a plus 10. So I go up to my factors, and after each addition symbol, I put a plus 3 and a plus 10 because those are my factors numbers. And then remember at the beginning, because I have an x squared in my problem that I'm factoring, I put an x and an x. Okay, now you're not done though, because now we need to go to step 3, and this is the extra step. There's basically 2 extra steps you have to do when you have a number in front, an A value that is not 1. Okay, in other words, a number in front of the x squared that's not 1. Okay, so now what you have to do is, notice step 3 over here, it says divide the factors by A. So my A value was 2, so what you have to do is you have to take these numbers, which you just factored, and you need to divide them by whatever the A value is, okay, which is 2. All right, and then once you do that, you're ready to write your final factored answer. So if the number divides, go ahead and divide it. So if we go to the second parentheses right here, that second parentheses would become x plus 5. Where did the 5 come from? Well, 10 divided by 2 is 5. But if I go to the first parentheses where I have the plus, 2 does not divide into 3. So if it does not divide into the number evenly, here's what you're going to do. It's a little trick. You leave the last number as is, 3, and then you take the number that you're dividing by, and then you just simply move it in front of the x. So that first quantity is going to become 2x plus 3. Okay, and that would be your factored answer. So the quantity 2x plus 3, when I multiply it with the quantity x plus 5, that would be the factor for the expression 2x squared plus 13x plus 15. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go through a few examples of these, and then we're going to, doing them is the best way to get it done. So let's go down to this problem here that has the blue marked by it. We're going to factor 3p squared minus 7p minus 40. So the first thing that I notice is this is a minus minus trinomial. So that means when I factor a minus minus trinomial, I go to my chart, that falls under number 3 in blue there. So I know that my factors are going to be, when I factor my two quantities, my two parentheses, a minus minus trinomial factors into a plus and a minus for my factors, okay? So now I'm going to figure out what numbers do I put at the end of each one of my quantities, each one of my parentheses. Here's how you do it, okay? You multiply, you take the A value, so remember the A value is 3, the B value is negative 7, the C value is negative 40, and what you do is you multiply the A and the C value together. So you're going to multiply 3 with negative 40, and that is equal to negative 120. Then after you do that, you're going to make your factor T chart. Okay, take that value, negative 120, that's going to be your first column, and that's going to be for multiplication. And then remember, in the second column, when you do your factor t-chart, you always put the b value, which is negative 7, and that column is going to stand for addition. So now what do we have to do to find my factors? I have to find a pair of numbers, so two numbers that multiply to make negative 120, but at the same time add to make negative 7. Okay, and this is where you're going to have to play with numbers a little bit here, and a calculator would definitely come in handy, because this is not really going to come to you just like right away, super easy on how to do this. Okay, and so what you could do is you could say, okay, well, oh my gosh, this is going to be hard, Mr. Trutna. So how about negative 12 times positive 10? Well, yeah, that equals negative 12 times positive 10. That would multiply to make negative 20, but the problem is negative 12 plus 10, that does not add to negative 7. So you know that those aren't your numbers, okay? You have to find numbers, okay? A pair of numbers that multiply to make negative 20. How about negative 40 times positive 3? Yeah, that works, okay, for multiplication. But negative 40 plus 3, that sure as heck does not add to negative 7. So those are not your answers. And you just got to keep going, you guys. All right, sometimes it'll take you 5 minutes, 3 minutes to find the pair of numbers that actually is going to work. Okay, I'm going to try negative 15 times positive 8. Those two pairs of numbers, those multiply to make negative 20. And lo and behold, look at this, negative 15 plus positive 8. Those two numbers add to make negative 7. So therefore, I have found my factors. It is plus 8 minus 15, okay, when I go up to my factors. And then remember, because my variable is a p, I'm going to have p plus 8, p minus 15 for my factors. But I'm not done, because now, because I had an a value that was not 1, I now need to divide both of these numbers by the a value. Okay, divide both of the factors by 3, and that's going to set you up. All right, so remember, here's the rule. When you divide, if the numbers divide in evenly, go ahead and divide it. So that second quantity divides evenly. It becomes p minus 5. 15 divided by 3 is 5. But the first quantity does not divide evenly, 8 divided by 3. So remember, what you do is, if it does not divide evenly, the trick is you take the bottom number, okay, you just rewrite the top number, just leave it, plus 8, and then you take the bottom number you're dividing by, and you move it in front of the p in this case. So I get my factors of 3p plus 8 multiplied with p minus 5. Okay, so those two quantities, when I multiply 3p plus 8 with the quantity p minus 5, that will equal 3p squared minus 7p minus 40, which is exactly what you're doing when you're factoring. Remember, when you're factoring, you're finding two quantities, two expressions that multiply to equal the original expression. All right, let's go down. Where's the next blue one? Ooh, right there. We got 3 more to go. So in this one here, we're now on page 28. We're in the top left. We have 3g to the second plus 20g plus 32. So remember, here's my a value. So my a value is 3. My b value is 20. My c value is 32. I have an a value that is some number other than 1. So I'm going to have to kind of work through the rules, or the steps that I did. So first of all, I'm going to set up my two quantities. Okay, I notice that this trinomial is a plus plus trinomial. So I'm going to scroll up here to my chart. That would be line number 1 in red. A plus plus trinomial means my factors are going to be plus and plus. So I know that both of my factors are going to be addition, okay, plus and plus. And so now I go through the steps. So here's what we do. Remember, when we have an a value that's some number other than 1, we're going to take the a value, we're going to multiply it with the c value. So in other words, we're going to go 3 times 32. That is 96. And then I'm going to set up my factor t chart. in order to find what my two numbers are that I'm going to put in my factors, okay? I take that 96, that's my first column, and that first column always represents multiplication. Then I take my b value, which is 20, I make that the top of my second column, and that is addition. So now it becomes a mathematical puzzle. And the puzzle is find me two numbers that multiply to make positive 96, but those same two numbers have to add to make positive 20. You go, oh man, Mr. Chudna, 1 times 96, that's 96. You are right, but the problem is 1 plus 96 sure is not 20. Boom, that's not it, okay? You have to play with numbers. You have to find a pair of numbers that multiply to make 96. Oh, 3 times 32, that is 96. But the problem is 3 plus 32 does not add to make 20. So that's not it, okay? How about 4? How about 4 times what? Now, if you don't know, you guys, what you do is you divide 4 into 96. Oh, it goes in 24 times. So 4 times 24 multiplies to make 96, but guess what? 4 plus 24 does not add to make 20, so that's not it. We have to keep trying until we actually find the answer, okay, you guys? So I don't know what it is, and this is where, I mean, this could get frustrating when you're trying to find this, okay? How about, I think I found it, 8 times 12. 8 multiplied with 12, that multiplies to 96. Oh, and look at this. 8 added with 12, that adds to 20. Therefore, I have found my factored numbers here. Okay, you guys, so I'm going to have a plus 8. I'm going to have a plus 12 in my quantity factors. My variable is g, so I'm going to have a g plus 8, a g plus 12, but I'm not done because now's where I need to divide my factors by the a value, okay? And this is a little trick we learn, and it always works to give you the factors. So, hey, you got it. So what's my first factor going to be? Does 3 divide into 8? The answer is no. So remember, when you're dividing, if it doesn't divide, just take that number you're dividing by, move it in front. So your first quantity is 3g plus 8. Okay, your second quantity, does 3 divide into 12? It does. So your second quantity becomes g plus 4. Therefore, my factors are the quantity 3g plus 8 multiplied with the quantity g plus 4. If I multiplied those two quantities together by double distributing, they would equal the original expression that I started with, which is exactly what factoring is. Okay, next one. This middle left example, 3d squared plus 20d plus 12. All right, so what's your a value? Remember, your a value is the number in front of the d squared part, that's 3. Your b value is the number in front of the d part, that's 20. Your c value is the number that does not have a variable next to it. We call that the constant, that's why its c is 12. Okay, so my a value is a number that is not 1. So I'm going to have to kind of do these extra steps. Okay, so first of all, though, notice my trinomial is a plus plus trinomial. I go up to my chart, my little cheat sheet right here, plus plus is line 1. So that means my two factors will be plus and plus. So I'm going to be dealing with nothing but positive numbers. So my two factors are going to have a plus and a plus in them, both addition, both positive there. Okay, now what do? Okay, if my a value is some number other than 1, remember you take your a value, which is 3, you multiply it with your c value, which is 12. 3 times 12 is 36. And then you set up your factor t chart to find your two numbers that are going to be your factors, that are going to go in your two factors here. 36 represents the first column, which represents multiplication. Then in the second column is always your b value, which in this case is 20, and that's going to represent addition. So now my mathematical puzzle is find two numbers that multiply to make 36, 6 times 6, but they have to add also to make 20. 6 plus 6 is not 20. So although 6 times 6 multiplies to make 36, 6 plus 6 does not add to make 20 there. Okay, so now I have to use my knowledge of multiplication, and I have to find the two numbers, all right? How about 2 times 18? 2 times 18 multiplies to make 36. Lo and behold, 2 plus 18 adds to make 20. So you might be thinking, Mr. Trina, how did you get that so easily? Well, you guys, I've been doing this for 30 plus years, so I'm pretty good with my multiplication skills and my addition skills, okay? Like I said, if you're not that great with your multiplication skills, it might take you a few minutes to find the pair of numbers you're looking for. But the trick is you always focus on multiplication first, and then you see if the numbers add, okay? So my two factors are going to be plus 2 plus 18. My variable is a d, so I'm going to have d plus 2, d plus 18. But I'm not done because now I need to divide my factors by my a value, which is 3. Okay, you do this division, this extra division step when you have an a value that's some number other than 1. Okay, now I'm ready to write my factors. So my first quantity, my first parentheses, because the 3 does not divide into the 2, remember you're going to write it as 3d plus 2. So if the number you're dividing by does not divide in, you just simply move that number that you're dividing by in front of the variable. It becomes 3d plus 2. The second quantity, because 3 divides into 18, you divide it. So the second quantity becomes d plus 6. So my factors are the quantity 3d plus 2 multiplied with the quantity d plus 6. Those two factors would multiply together to equal the expression that I started with, which once again is exactly what factoring is. Okay, last example here, 5z to the second minus 17z plus 14. Okay, so notice the a value is positive 5. So it's some number other than 1. So I'm going to have to do the process that I've been working through, the strategy that I've been doing. Your b value would be negative 17, and then your c value would be positive 14. So what do we do when my a value is some number other than 1? Remember, you take the a value 5, you multiply it with the c value 14. 5 times 14 is 7. Whoops, I forgot to do one thing. Sorry. I look at my trinomial. My trinomial is a minus plus trinomial. So I go to my little chart here. Minus plus trinomial is line 4 in green. Notice line 4 is a minus plus trinomial. So that means my factors are going to be minus and minus. So when I work out my factors, I'm going to have two negative values, okay? So my two factors I know are both going to have a negative value in them. Okay, so going back, 5 times 14 is 70. So now I take that 70 and it helps me make my t-chart. The 70 goes in the first column, that's multiplication. The second column number is always your b value, which is negative 17, and that's going to be for addition. Now is you have a mathematical puzzle. You have to find two numbers that multiply to make positive 70. Both of the numbers have to be negatives because my factors are going to be negative, negative. But those same two numbers have to add to make negative 17. And you're going, I don't know, Mr. Trutna. I mean, who knows that? Well, you guys, this is where you have to practice your mathematical skills, okay? I do know, how about negative 2 times negative 35? Those two definitely multiply to make positive 70. But if you add up negative 2 and negative 35, those don't add up to negative 17. So although they multiply, they don't add. Okay, and this is where if we were in class, I would literally stop until somebody told me what the two numbers are. Okay, but I'm going to do probably the most obvious numbers that multiply to make 70, negative 7 and negative 10. Okay, why am I doing, remember they both have to be negative because I know my factors are minus minus. Those two numbers multiply to make positive 70, and look what happens, negative 7 plus negative 10, those add up to negative 17. I have found my two factor numbers. It's minus 7 and minus 10, and my variable is a z, so I have z minus 7, z minus 10, But I'm not done because I had that a value of 5, so I have to divide both of my factors by 5. Okay, now I'm ready to write my factors, my final answer, my final factors. Okay, let's look at z minus 7 divided by 5. 5 does not divide into 7. So if it doesn't divide, you put the number you're dividing by in front of the variable. So that first quantity, 5z minus 7. Okay, the second quantity, 5 divides into 10, and it would become z minus 2. Okay, so there we go. There's my factors. So the quantity 5z minus 7 multiplied with the quantity z minus 2 would equal the original expression 5z to the second minus 17 plus 14, which is exactly what factoring is, finding two things that multiply to make the original expression. Okay, so you guys, there is, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 very good solid examples of how to factor a trinomial when your a value is some number not equal to 1.